Welcome to the Mind Solve podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Jonathan. The topic of this episode is Kind folk are my kinfolk. This is a statement about choosing to develop healthy connections with others based on the shared value of human kindness. When we connect through kindness, we are better equipped to develop lifelong transformational relationships. So, like with all Mind Solve podcast episodes, I want you to listen in as if I'm speaking directly to you and you only. This is your opportunity to listen, to learn, and to apply what you learned today through this episode. So, for our agenda, here's what we're going to cover for this episode. I'm going to start by highlighting some research findings on how workplace incivility and rudeness creates stress potentially in your life, in the life of many workers and professionals. Following, I will share how the science behind mindful kindness can transform your life, reduce stress in your life, and help you cultivate healthy human interconnections. And then we will do like we normally do. We will end this episode by covering some of the mindful practices as solutions to help you deal with the workplace incivility that may exist in your organization and your workplace, and help you counter some of the rudeness that comes with those experiences. And the whole point of this is to remember, kind folk are my kinfolk. When we connect with kindness, we have a great way to unify ourselves as being human beings and not human doings. So let's get started with some of the research. And what I want to highlight first is a Harvard Business Review survey that was published in November of 2022. In this survey, it was reported some really important findings regarding workplace incivility. So again, I'm talking directly to you. I'd like you to take note and listen closely so that you can determine if this resonates and impacts you directly in your workplace. 76% of workers experience workplace incivility on a monthly basis, at least once. 78% witness at least one event of workplace incivility on a monthly basis. 70% witness incivility at work multiple times in a given month. And another 73% said that they have had experiences with clients or customers who have treated them unkindly or rudely in their interactions throughout work. In this same Harvard report, there was an indication of 4 core reasons of why workplace incivility is getting worse. Now, mind you, it's getting worse. And this was reported as of November of 2022. Workers are experiencing more stress and pressure in the workplace, creating a work environment that is less kind, and it's showing up in the form of bullying, abrasiveness, and sometimes this bullying abrasiveness has been deemed as strong leadership capabilities, which is really odd. Leaders have power not to overpower people. Leaders have power to empower the people that they're leading. That's the point of having power as a leader. When it shows up as workplace incivility through the form of bullying and abrasiveness, it creates stress. This is not kind folk becoming your kinfolk. The second reason, negative emotional work environment. Workers and professionals today are experiencing more anger than they have in the past. And that anger is showing up sometimes in very malicious forms. And even worse, it's showing up quietly as actively and disengaged workers who are systematically tearing down their organizations by doing things that are subversive because they're acting out as a result of the stress in their environment, the negative energy in the environment, the work environment. Number 3 of the 4, deteriorated work relationships. People who are behaving more transactional, causing workers to feel used and manipulated, creates a less positive work environment, thus for causing more workplace incivility. And number 4 of the top 4 reasons why we're seeing workplace incivility get worse, and again, this was reported as of November of 2022, cyber incivility. We now have a social ecosystem of many platforms in which we can communicate and share information on our personal time or professional time for that matter. And the more we intake negative information, it impacts our mood and our mental wellness, which contributes to workplace incivility. So think about this for you. If you're on social platforms and you're not curating what you view, what you watch, what you experience, it can have a negative impact on your ability to come into work with a positive outlook about the work that you're going to do. And it can contribute towards workplace incivility. Now that we've looked at some of that data, let's ask ourselves some provocative questions about workplace incivility. And this is where I want you to take a personal moment right now, being aware and attentive, and ask yourself these questions and take note for yourself. Have you experienced stress related to workplace incivility? Chances are that you have. When we see north of 70% of people are experiencing it based upon recent research, the likelihood is that you've experienced it directly. What does it look like and feel like in the workplace if you have experienced it? Is it that brute rudeness, aggressive behavior, maybe bullying? And in some cases, it's subtle in a form of a microaggression or micro invalidation that could also borderline touch on discrimination as workplace incivility. Let's say, for instance, that you haven't experienced it directly yourself personally. What is the chance that you've witnessed it? And if you have witnessed it, what is the impact of witnessing workplace incivility as it pertains to your own personal self-engagement? Again, when we connect with kind people, when we work in environments of kindness with respect and decency, we have less stress in our lives. However, the research is revealing that we're having some difficulties with maintaining work environments that are low stress without workplace incivility. These are questions I encourage you to think about for yourself and take personal note. By the end of this episode, we're going to cover some mindfulness practice solutions that can help you enhance your self-compassion, your self-kindness, and also help you improve upon your capabilities to cultivate healthy human interconnections. Now that we talked a little bit about workplace incivility, let's turn the coin and let's look at the positive side of opportunity here. Also in the research, the American Journal of Lifestyle Medicine reported the following information that's really critical for you to take note of. So listen closely to this. Workplace stress in situations of workplace incivility accounts for about 8% of the total U.S. healthcare costs that we see, and up to 120,000 deaths per year. That's astounding. That stress of going to work and feeling like you're in a hostile environment of aggression has health implications. And in some cases, it could increase mortality rates for people who are already dealing with a lot of stress, who may already be dealing with health complications or challenges in their life. So we have to take this very seriously. Now, on the positive side of it, let's talk about kindness. The topic of this episode is kind folk are my kinfolk. And here's why kindness is so important, not only as a human capability, but also as a professional way of going about connecting with other people and working with others, is because kindness demonstrated through self-compassion and gratitude buffers stress by enhancing the brain chemistry, and it bolsters pro-social behaviors that carry over outside the workplace, that carry over into your personal life. So let's talk about some of the science behind that. Pro-social behaviors in the form of positive social connection through kindness is associated with a 50% reduction in the risk of early mortality. Thus, kindness contributes to a more full and longer life. We live longer, we have more joy in our lives. Kindness increases and strengthens the parasympathetic nervous system and contributes towards better digestion system, decreased heart rate, a stronger immune system, overall improved involuntary functions of the body, and even your reflexes. The brain benefits from kindness. So kindness is not only cool, it's healthy. It influences the brain and the condition of how we function. It also improves the cardiovascular activity and reactivity by lowering the blood pressure level. Now, here's where the science gets really important. I want you to listen very closely to this because this is really important for you to hear. Kindness also boosts the effects of oxytocin levels in your body, which is the love hormone, which plays a role in forming your social bonds with others and building trust. It enhances the neurotransmitter of dopamine, which is the chemical messenger in your brain that gives you the feeling of euphoria. And it also bolsters your serotonin levels, which helps to regulate your mood. Now, if I said nothing else in this episode, those 3 points right there should really resonate. It's all in the science that by practicing kindness, by being in a kindness-oriented environment, it's really good for your brain. It's really healthy for you. So we've covered some of the research on how workplace incivility causes stress, negatively impacts your health. And now we've talked a little bit about how kindness, from the science of it, makes things better for you and for everyone else around you. So here again, some provocative questions for you. How are you currently and mindfully holding space for your own self-kindness and making more healthy, sustainable connections with other kind people who are working professionals right within your organization or in your community for that matter? Take a moment right now and think about someone you know who's kind, who's compassionate to other people, someone who's been kind and understanding towards you, supportive of you. Just the thought of that person in this moment, as you're feeling in your body, in your heart, how does it make you feel? What memories come to mind when you've come in contact with that person? How effortless is it to invest time with a person who is kind to you? And what is the value of working in an environment with kind people who demonstrate consistent respect, empathy, and appreciation of your human value. This is something that you deserve. Kindness contributes to all of us winning. It replaces the spirit of competition with the spirit of cooperation, which unifies us across all identities, across all backgrounds, across all perspectives of life. Kindness is a connector. So now that we've touched on some of the research findings that relates to workplace incivility and the mindful benefits of kindness and how it helps to counter stress, we're going to discuss some core concepts, followed by solutions to help you deepen the kindness connections in your life that work towards reducing stress in a mindful manner. As we transition, here's what I want you to really take note of right now in this moment as you listen to me say this. Kind folk often show up with that spirit of cooperation, not competition. They don't have a story to upstage your story or feel the need to compare their experience or credentials to determine who's better between you and them. And at the very least of things, they're not asking about the line of work that you do or your social economic status to determine how much they should or should not respect you and value you as a human being. Kindness is intentional without the expectation of some kind of return or gain in the process. Think about how you show up and how others show up for you when it relates to kindness. So conceptually, we're going to start first with something that you may have heard of before. It's not new information, but we're going to put a different lens on it this time. Emotional intelligence capability. So what is emotional intelligence? Goldman's done a lot of great work here in the research. Emotional intelligence has been talked about in the research since 1990. I'm going to simplify it here as it relates to kindness. It starts first with self-awareness. You noticing the stress triggers in your life and how it generates automatic thoughts in a non-judgmental way, observing those thoughts, not self-critiquing yourself or not shaming yourself in the process, but just acknowledging the automatic thoughts and being self-aware in mind-body awareness. That's self-kindness. That's the start of being emotionally intelligent. Social awareness. Paying attention to the sensory of your mind-body impact in all environments. Now, when I say all environments, I want you to think in current modern day, in person and online. We now live in a world whereby we're socially connected through platforms, through technology, not just through work email, not through just text messages between friends and family, but also on social platforms. So being aware of, are you feeding your brain healthy content? Are you taking in negative information that demonstrates the bruteness and abrasiveness that can come in our society as a common diet mentally? Or are you taking the time and the care to make sure that you're reducing the amount of that type of content that's coming in that could lead towards your own sense of abrasiveness that you bring into your workplace or that you see from others? So that's social awareness. Self-regulation is a third of the four. Practicing focused mind-body regulation through breathing, the mind-body breathing exercise, and somatic experiences. So I've talked about this on the human being, not human doing episode. Breathing in through your nose 4 seconds, holding it for 2 seconds, releasing it from the mouth for 6 seconds. That's an easy breathing exercise to regulate yourself in stress. easy breathing exercise. Somatic may be moving your body, releasing tension in your body. You could do that with a sponge, a soft ball, your shoulders, lifting and raising them, releasing the tension in your body. There's many ways you can regulate your mind-body awareness. That's part of being emotionally intelligent, checking in with yourself, being aware of how your emotions from your automatic thoughts are influencing your body experience in those moments. And then fourth is interaction and relationship management. Here's where I want you to really think right now carefully. Assess the type of human connections you have at work and in your personal life. Are they transactional or transformational, which we're going to get into it in a moment? When you connect with people, do you feel like you're constantly doing this medium of exchange? You got to give something to get something back. Is that the most emotionally intelligent way for you to connect with people? Probably not. So we've established emotional intelligence capability as part of taking care of yourself, being kind to yourself. Let's build on that. Mind, body, speak. This comes in the form of mirror neurons. Now, mirror neurons, let me define what that means. In the study of emotional intelligence, we've learned that when we interact with one another, human beings, we communicate through the brain cells communicate, and we almost respond and mirror each other based upon our interactions. This can come in the eye contact. This can come in the form of the body language, how one is sitting, their posture. It can also come in the tone of voice and even the choice of words. What we have to acknowledge is that the brain is doing what it's supposed to be doing at all times because we're human beings. And whether we recognize it or not, we're communicating all the time. Even when we're not saying it, our bodies, our connections are communicating through mirror neurons. So what you're giving out, others can feel it and read it. So kindness requires you to be sincere, right? Because you can tell if someone's being sincere and connecting and compassionate with you or if they're not. There's a great quote I love by Ralph Waldo Emerson, and it goes something like this. Your actions speak so loudly that I can't hear a word that you're saying. Again, your actions speak so loudly I can't hear a word that you're saying. That is the essence of mirror neurons. How we generate energy between ourselves and others gives off a message and energy. When we're doing that in a sincere, kind, compassionate way, we're connecting on a human level that allows us to improve the quality of our human interconnection, reduce stress, and block out the incivility that could exist between two people. So mirror neurons, how you show up is how you show up. Now, we've established emotional intelligence is important, that capability of mirror neurons. Here's where I want you to really sit in this space and do a really careful assessment of how you're connecting. I'm going to cover a mind-solve concept referred to as the connection curve. So imagine you have a horizontal axis. On the horizontal axis, you have on the far left, transactional. On the far right end of that axis, you have transformational. On the vertical axis, you have at the very bottom, tethered, and at the very top, untethered. Now, what you see here is that in defining this connection curve is when you have a human connection that is very low on the curve, highly tethered and transactional, that creates a greater level of stress because of toxicity. Toxicity in interactions and relationships is one of the ways that workplace incivility becomes prevalent in interactions, in connections, in relationships. And it's not just workplace incivility, it's in life in general. If you feel like every time you connect with someone, you've got to give and give and give, or they've got to take and take and take, and that your relationship is based on this tethering, that's hard to sustain. It's unhealthy, it's stressful. Now, on the far end of that curve, the most healthy alternative to the farthest end of that curve is a highly untethered and highly transformational relationship. Those are those connections with friends or associates, those kind folk that are your kinfolk, that you can sit down with and have a conversation that can last for hours and you lose track of time because you're not worried about that moment in which you've got to do something that is leveraging you. You don't feel like you're going to be manipulated or used in that process. And you're giving your full self. You're giving your authentic self. You can be fully vulnerable. You can be fully in the moment, mindfully and present, enjoying that experience. This can happen in the workplace. When people are connected on a transformational level that's untethered, where there's not a power drive, creativity becomes expansive and boundless, ideas, innovation, productivity increases. It's a healthy, low stress way to really connect, not only in your professional work life, but also in your personal life with family, friends, and business partners. Now that I've defined it for you specifically, the connection curve, take an inventory for yourself. How many of your relationships are truly transformational and untethered? And how many of those relationships can you say in your workplace or just personal life are heavily tethered and transactional? Notice how it feels in your body when you connect with people who are transactional in their behavior versus those people that are transformational in their behavior, how uplifted, how inspired and motivated you are by connecting with them, sharing time and space. This is also the essence of creating that kindness connection. This is the basis of it, the connection curve. This is the ultimate goal in mind, is to have more transformational relationships and to mitigate or minimize the amount of transactional relationships that exist in your life. So let's give a little more context behind that. Transactional interactions over time develop into transactional relationships. Ask yourself, as you're working with others, are you being transactional? Are they being transactional? And how long can you sustain that? Going back to the research, those transactional interactions can start to develop into very toxic interactions that become incivil in the workplace, abrasive, rude, unkind. These are the things we want to mitigate against. So now that we've established some of the conceptual basis of how we want to look at the opportunity to create more kind folk or my kinfolk, let's talk about the solutions. The first solution is about mindful gratitude as a daily practice. This is about taking care of yourself. Every day, looking for opportunities to mindfully acknowledge a kind interaction or connection with another human being. It could be random. It could be a perfect stranger. Noticing those moments, taking inventory of them, and expressing your gratitude. Whether you do that directly to someone who might hold the door open for you as you're getting into the elevator or walking out of the building. Or maybe you're just taking note of it. You can do it in your journal. You could do it in a digital note. The act of writing something down or taking note of it increases the impact by 50% because you're causing your brain to really process it in the moment. Very simple. This is something you can apply today. A mindful gratitude daily practice and taking care of yourself. Now, you might say to yourself, wow, that's something that I can do, or that's something that maybe I'm already doing. Do it daily. The consistency of it. Choose joy is all about healthy, sustainable, consistent practice of a mindfulness behavior. This is the pro-social behavior that the research indicated. This is taking care of yourself. This is feeding your database of kindness experiences in the moment. Now, how do we do this? How do we create more kindness with others? This is a really important point. Mindful communication using a mind-solve concept, the 3D feedback method. Now, before I get into defining what this means, let me dispel some of the myths that we've heard in the workplace. One of them is, well, you've got to be willing to take constructive criticism. It's almost a pragmatic contradiction. Constructive criticism. Criticism is criticism. When we hear that term, even, the sensations in our body puts us on our defenses. Okay, I'm going to get constructive criticism. So that means I'm going to hear something that I don't want to hear that's going to be packaged as a prickly sandwich. They're going to try to put something positive, something negative, and then something positive. This is ineffective. Or you hear the statement, I want to give you some feedback. Just the term, I want to give you some or the statement, I want to give you some feedback, typically doesn't end out well for the receiver of that feedback. And likelihood of it is that it's going to be very general or non-specific as a form of feedback and not very kind. This is where the 3D feedback method becomes a very powerful way of communicating. 3D feedback method is a powerful way to provide kind, assertive feedback to others. You purposely provide the feedback with specificity, describing the experience, defining the meaning, and determining the effectiveness. The value to the person that is receiving the feedback really understands where you're coming from in a kind way. It increases, potentially, oxytocin, the bond. It helps with dopamine, the euphoria, because it typically feels good, because it's real and it's authentic and it's kind. And it can also have a positive serotonin impact on the mood of the person who's receiving the feedback. So let me model it. Describe, define, and determine. Here's what it might sound like. Associate. When I observed you engaging with the client, using the client's name, getting up from your desk, walking the client to the door at the end of your interaction with the client, that description, and here it comes to defining, was an excellent demonstration of your professionalism. I can notice that the client's eye contact with you was strong. The client walked out of that experience smiling, thanking you. There was a warmth between the two of you and how you were engaging, your spacing between one another, which means that you really did connect with the client. And it was highly effective, not only for that client experience, but I could see that you were enjoying that moment with the client. I love seeing you do that quality work with your clients and when you interact. That's 3D feedback. Describe, what you observed, own it as a provider of the feedback, define the meaning behind that interaction, and determining the level of effectiveness. It's kind, it's assertive, it's specific, it's sincere. This creates a greater bond of kindness and connection between you and others when you can provide 3D feedback method as your approach of providing feedback. Now, let's say same scenario, however, could use some improvement. This is what it might sound like. Associate, as I observed you with the client and communicating, I saw great eye contact, use of the client's name, shaking of the client's hand at the entry and engagement of the client interaction. And what I can tell you from that, I could tell that the client felt more comfortable with you as you continue to talk about how you could provide them the right kind of professional services that meets their unique needs. Now, where there's an opportunity to be even more effective is for you to schedule that next appointment with a specific date or time versus saying to the client you'll be giving them a call. That's recommending versus reinforcement. The first example was reinforcement. This is recommending an alternative to be more effective. Giving someone feedback and leaving them on a cliffhanger without resources to get better or to benefit from your feedback is not a demonstration of kindness. This is the essence and the power of the 3D feedback method. This is something that you can apply immediately. When this has been used with leaders, of teammates or associates, it helps improve the confidence and the connection between the team, between the leader and the associate, because it's feedback that is specifically describing the moment, defining the meaning, and determining the effectiveness. It's not constructive criticism. It's there to help the receiver of the feedback. So far we've covered 2 solutions. Let's build on that. This is one of my favorite ways to demonstrate kindness. Mindful presence, empathetic behavior. Also, I refer to this as the sit beside. So first, let's define empathy. Empathy is the action of understanding, being aware of, being sensitive to, and vicariously experiencing the feelings, the thoughts, and experiences of another, of either past or present, without having the feelings and thoughts yourself, but fully being able to connect with that person in a way that you are really sitting in that moment with them. Now, here's what the sit beside technique looks like. Number 1, active listening. To empathize with someone, to be kind in that moment, kind folk are my kinfolk is the point of this, is to be listening and paying close attention to what you're hearing and what you're observing in all of the 5 senses, or 4 of the senses, I should say. Using the mirror neurons in your observation. As you're making eye contact with that person, or you're on the phone with them and you're listening intently to their tone of voice and their choice of words, or you're through a connection of web conferencing, you're really focused in on the person who you are listening to and observing them in that moment. And affirming your listening with words of affirmation. Here's what that might sound like. And I like to use this sensing to give you a guide. So think about the 5 senses going from head to toe, top down, side. So first would be sight. I can see how that moment was very difficult for you. Play on the word of smell. Wow, that really stinks that happened to you. I can really tell that you're really, really upset about this. I can hear it in your voice. Hearing. I can only imagine that interaction left a bad taste in your mouth. Or I can even feel it in my body just by the sound of your voice and your breath, how upset you are by what happened here. This is the sitting beside technique in terms of words of affirmation. And along with that, it's expressing gratitude that this person that you're listening to, that you're empathizing with, had the courage to be vulnerable with you, to share their experience, and ask you to be there in that space and time with them by simply just saying, I appreciate you trusting me and feeling comfortable sharing this with me, allowing me to be here with you in this moment. Now, why do we call it sitting beside? Because oftentimes when we're talking to someone or we're listening to someone who's going through something that's difficult or stressful, we're sitting across from them. We can only see from our point of view. However, when we figuratively or literally get up and we walk around the table and we sit beside the person who is experiencing that moment, we get a chance to see from their perspective, from their point of view. We get to feel the warmth of their experience in the biosphere. We get to relate to where they're sitting. So we're sitting beside them and we're joining them. We're not sympathizing with them, we're empathizing with them. This is the sit beside technique. This is something you can try immediately today. Imagine the power and the impact of that. Imagine if you had that experience of someone sitting beside you that is in a transformational relationship that you trust, that you admire, that you have confidence in. It reduces stress. And our final solution is this. This is the fun, easiest solution of all. Connecting with others. Finding time on your calendar to invest your time and to share space with those that you care about and those who care about you. These are those transformational opportunities that could really blossom and enhance your experience in the workplace, going to lunch with a colleague or associate, planning a virtual cup of coffee connection if you're long distance. We work more remote than ever before. Schedule some time to get on the phone and just to learn about the people that you work with. Learn their backstory. Find out what motivates them. What's their purpose in life? What are their aspirations and dreams? Without any expectation of anything in return, just simply having a rich curiosity to connect. And you can also do this in your personal life. Here's another simple, fun way to use the cyber world and the social platform and social ecosystem that we live in. When you see someone celebrate their accomplishment online, like it, make a comment, congratulate them. You don't even have to know the person, but the fact that someone has invested their time and energy to achieve a goal, to acquire a credential, to reach a new milestone in their life, to have a major event, it's a beautiful thing to celebrate the successes of others. It's actually good for you. Kindness is a way to enhance your life, increase your mortality. It has all kinds of benefits, as we talked about, for the brain and the chemical reaction and how you respond to the world around you. More celebration, more acknowledgement of human success and accomplishment connects us more than we can even imagine. There's so many things in the world today that tells us that we're so different that we can't be together. I tend to disagree with that. I tend to believe that kindness is the most common connector of human experience. So I invite you, as you've heard today, we talked about the science, we talked about the research, we talked about the concepts of kindness, to start to apply these mindful practices in your experience, both in work and in your personal life. So I end with this. I'm on a quest to connect based upon kindness. Kind folk are my kinfolk. I hope you join me on this quest as you continue to mindfully practice the opportunity to be more human being and not human doing. With that, be mindful and choose joy.